Well, I think genre needs to shape sermons quite a bit. And you mentioned Paul. That's a good place to start. This is literate. These are letters. This isn't storytelling. And I know the first big chunk of my ministry, I almost always preached from Paul because that's where the ideas were. And I was a Lutheran and I had ideas. It seemed the right way to do it to me. I changed my mind about that as time went along. I think there are ways that you can make use of Paul and where stories can help. And primarily there it would be, you got a text from Corinth. Tell the story that sets the context. Paint the picture of this congregation. Then when you come to what Paul says, you hardly have to add anything because people will hear it and they'll know exactly what Paul means. So that would be one contextual way that you could put stories together. But it's true, there are many passages in Scripture that are basically teaching passages, and there's nothing wrong with teaching. I just don't want to recommend that people do that every week. We have, biblical scholars have been very good to us, and they've given us all kinds of tools to study Scripture now. Historical criticism, literary criticism, narrative criticism, those two often conflate with each other, and many other possibilities as well. Narrative criticism, as I understand it, wants to take the narrative and the narrative as a whole seriously. One of the books that I read on the subject that helped me an awful lot by Robert Alter, The Art of Biblical Narrative, where he takes certain stories and shows that. And, and I probably have said this before, it was almost mind-blowing for me to read that because it made so much sense. It doesn't mean that we don't do the other kinds of criticism. We need all the tools that we can gather. And some weeks there's going to be some snippet from historical criticism that's just the ticket for the sermon. Another week it may be a narrative look and seeing where this story fits. It seems like we never marvel as pastors at the fact that we're preaching out of a book, Mark. This year we're preaching out of Mark's book. And on a given Sunday, we have 8 verses. Now, if I wanted to tell you about a novel that I read, and say, I'm going to do this by explaining the 8 verses in the 33rd chapter on page 406, you'd think I was crazy. Yeah. But we're taking these snippets out of here all the time and focusing on that as if it's a beginning and end in itself. And I do not think that is the author's intention.